One of the most infamous days in American history. Everybody remembers exactly where they were when they heard about the September 11 attacks. Widely considered the deadliest terror attack on US soil, the events of 9/11 would change the course of history and send shockwaves around the world. These terrifying attacks were orchestrated by one man, a man who would haunt the dreams of the Pentagon for nearly a decade, a man who became one of the most recognizable faces in American culture, Osama bin Laden. After a single day, bin Laden became a form of national celebrity. Everybody knew his face, and everybody knew his name. This man was not a celebrity by choice, but was a celebrity produced by media, myth, and national identity. Bin Laden's fame was a very particular type, one that revealed how American celebrity culture extends beyond the entertainment industry, that fame can turn enemies into symbolic figures that unify a nation. In the 1st century BC, Roman historian Sallust wrote that the Republic had descended into internal strife after the destruction of its enemy, Carthage, in the Third Punic War. He wrote that the fear of the enemy, or metus hostilis, was a key binding agent for domestic cohesion, and the subsequent loss of the enemy after the war had led the Roman people to turning on one another. English political historian Dominic Tierney connected this idea of metus hostilis to American culture in a 2016 paper titled "Does America Need an Enemy?" He wrote that America is a young society with little history to connect its people when compared to older European countries. American identity is built on ideology rather than ethics. We see this with the idea of the American dream that anyone can be anything with enough hard work. But Tierney believes this results in a need for symbolic figures to define the us versus them in American society. Turning to history, this theory reveals a pattern. Whenever American nationalism was up, there was a big bad wolf character out there in the world threatening their way of life. World War II had Nazi Germany, the Cold War had the Soviet Union, and the Vietnam War had communism. By the 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, America lacked a unifying enemy, and the stage was set for a new villain. Prior to 9/11, while not as well known, bin Laden was infamous for organizing some of the biggest terror incidents across the world, and an interview with the Emir of Al-Qaeda was rare. In 1998, ABC reporter John Miller secured an hour-long interview with bin Laden and provided one of the most comprehensive reports about the experience in his 1999 piece published in Esquire. Miller painted a picture of a calm, soft-spoken, ideological man, one that pushed against the imaginary rhetoric of a crazy Arab hell-bent on the destruction of America. This interview showed that bin Laden understood the power Western media could have on his message, and he made a point to create a spectacle and paint himself as a compelling media figure. French theorist Guy Debord explains that when the real world changes into simple images become real beings and effective motivations of hypnotic behavior. This is the basic theory behind media spectacle. Simple images embody society's core values and controversies. The spectacle of 9/11 can be considered as the defining media event of the 21st century, and the media fallout led to bin Laden's face being plastered on magazines and newspapers across the globe. The media companies turned his ideologies into a simple narrative of good versus evil, filling in the next character in metus hostilis and turning bin Laden into a celebrity villain. Zachary Mitnick explains this in his thesis paper, that US media sensationalized jihadi terrorism, framing it as mythic, larger than life, international power that nobody knew where it would strike next. This created exactly what bin Laden was after: fear. Bin Laden's status as a celebrity villain became a key function for American society and identity in the decade following 9/11. As explained by Sallust and Tierney, there was a massive sense of national unity that flooded in following the attacks. America had an enemy again. This unity came with an increased trust in the government, and the decision to go to war against terror by the Bush administration led to an estimated 181,000 Americans enlisting in the armed forces. The surge in nationalism following the attacks is hard to understate. Coverage on the following war of terror further amplified fear and strengthened the villain narrative, bringing the American people closer. All of this came as a result of bin Laden's celebrity image. It was not accidental. The media created it to serve as a cultural function. Bin Laden was to become the symbolic antagonist America needed to reaffirm its identity. The attacks in September did more than take the lives of the American people. It took the American sense of security and gave the population an opportunity to band together as a single people against a common enemy. Following his assassination in 2011, bin Laden's celebrity soared, and there was near total saturation of his image across US media. That week, it was the top news story across the country. Memes circled the internet. NBC's Saturday Night Live was full of skits featuring his likeness, and a feature-length film was in the works. The reaction following his death by US media and pop culture was overwhelming and cemented him as a cultural product. This level of attention is something that even the most loved American celebrities don't attain after death. Yet here was a Saudi Arabian man who slaughtered thousands of Americans getting post-mortem celebrity treatment. Like it or not, bin Laden was, and still remains, a celebrity in American culture, and the fallout after his assassination led to his image becoming shorthand for terrorist in American culture. Suddenly, he had shifted from being a person to a symbol. Karen Sturmheimer explains how celebrity narratives simplify complicated issues, and this is exactly what happened in the 2000s. People connected the complicated issues around the war on terror with the simple celebrity narrative of bin Laden as an evil man with a long scraggly beard speaking gibberish. Talk to anybody around the world about terrorism, and the first thing that will pop into their head is likely to be a picture of Osama bin Laden. To this day, he remains a cultural product, a symbol that America continues to use to define itself and its enemies. Osama bin Laden became a celebrity not because of who he was, but because of what America needed him to be. America needed an enemy. She needed some motivation. She needed something to remind her people that they were all members of this single nation. The American media utilized the tragedy of the US Embassy bombings and the events of 9/11 to paint a cultural picture and a shared perspective of American culture. Bin Laden's fame reveals how American media, identity, and nationalism intertwine, and how America turns its enemies into icons. In the 2000s, the American people needed something to work towards, something to be proud of, something to prove that they could fight their way out of the lowest lows and come out on top. And that is exactly what bin Laden was. A symbol of the United States of America against the common enemy, a true celebrity in American culture.